Good morning, everybody. My name's John Williams. I'm the Dean of the Law School, and with my colleague Corinne Walding, the Student Advisor, we'll soon be making a presentation to you on the Adelaide Law School. Thank you very much for bearing the elements and coming out here today. I appreciate that very much, and I'm also very much appreciate your interest in law. Welcome to the Bonython Hall. This is where many of you will graduate. You usually stand over there and walk across. The Chancellor stands there, and you depart through that door. So I just want to get you that image of your future in front of you. It's a great day, I must admit, when graduations come around. So let me tell you something about our history. The Adelaide Law School was founded in 1883. It's the second oldest law school in the country. If we think about that, one of the burdens I happily take on is the fact that our law school is older than our country. Which is an amazing thing if you think about it, to have an institution that's older than the country that it serves. One of the other things we're quite proud about is that this university and this law school was admitting women from day one. It's part of the South Australian tradition, really. We have I believe, an outstanding tradition in legal scholarship and teaching, and one of the things I want you to take away from this is this tradition that we have does imbue what we try and do in terms of our ongoing research and our ongoing teaching. So if I could just dwell a little bit more on the history of our law school before I talk about some of the aspects of what we're currently doing. So we have leading members of the profession in its broadest terms. So the former Chief Justice John Doyle, who we've just made an adjunct professor at the law school, and the current Chief Justice Chris Kourakis. I could go on. There are many Chief Justices and other leading members of the Supreme Courts and the Federal Courts of Australia have come through our law school. Given the time we are at, and we're in the middle of election, I should just point out we've had leading officials, public officials there. So the Premier, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, Senator Wong and Christopher Pyne, they're all our graduates. But I could put up list after list after list after list. We've had our graduates have gone on to make contributions to public life. Just looking at our academics, some of our things, and again a long list. James Crawford there, who you can see, Anne Orford and John Finnis. James Crawford, I just picked him. This year there's a lecture in his honour here at the university. James Crawford is at Cambridge University, did his degree here, a great supporter of our law school, currently arguing, or just completed arguing for Australia in the International Court of Justice in the whaling case. Many of you probably are following that. So one of our graduates is one of the leading international lawyers in the world. And a theme that we should talk about is our commitment to international law, which is growing. So a bit more of a history. We have 18 Rhodes Scholars. When you go across the law school, you'll see there's a board with our Rhodes Scholars. We've had 8 Fulbright Scholars. We've had 1 former Prime Minister and 1 known comedian. So this underscores the fact you can take your law degree anywhere. What's new at the law school at the moment? Well, this is a very dense slide, but let me tell you. Last year we signed an agreement with the Law Society of South Australia, which is the leading association of lawyers in this state, to establish a graduate diploma of legal practice. Everyone who completes their law degree, in order to practice, they have to do a graduate practical legal training course. Now, we have made that seamless now with the Law Society. So when you finish your law degree, there's about a 6-month course which is required by anyone who wants to practice, and we're now putting that into operation with the Law Society, and so there will be a seamless transition from your law degree to the graduate diploma to the workforce. Another thing that's quite new, last year, Corinne and myself, we just started our international study tour. As you know, the university is committed for our graduates to have an international experience of some kind. We're lifting the number of people going overseas. You can do that in many ways. You can spend a semester overseas, which you'll see our partners. One other way of doing it is one of these short 3-week tours. And Corinne and I led it last year, and you can see that we went to Germany and the Netherlands. We met with our partners at the University of Mannheim and Utrecht. We had tours of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, went to the international criminal justice and saw the courts that are dealing with the world's war criminals. And it was a fascinating experience for all of us. And we also had the opportunity to be taught by some of the leading academics in the field across Germany and the Netherlands. And we'll be doing this again this year and growing the number of international study tours we're doing. So that's what's new. Let's just take a step back and say, well, why would you study law? What is law? Well, where is law and where you find it? Well, you find it everywhere. International conventions and treaties are sources of law. Constitutional and fundamental other documents, and I'm a constitutional lawyer, so I see the world through the prism of the Australian and Supreme Court, South Australian Constitution. Legislation that are on the statutes passed by our parliaments, and obviously the judgments of the courts that interpret them. At its very basic, law is an expression of what a just society should look like, what our just relationships should be between ourselves as citizens and between ourselves and the state. And the rule of law, something that we spend a lot of time discussing and thinking about, is really about trying to regulate those relations, about striking balances, about mediating conflict, about trying to provide for a society which is both just, fair and equitable. The legal profession then is learning about how law operates in our society. And it's one of the first steps, your law degree, is to joining a profession. And a legal profession, any profession, has to be dedicated to service. It's about making a contribution to your fellow citizens. It's about making a contribution to the public good. At base, that's what professions need to be able to say, to be given many of the privileges that come with it. They have to be committed to the highest ethical standards and behaviour. It's one of the things that you often see when lawyers or other members of professions come crashing down. The fall is quite large because the obligations are quite great. So lawyers' responsibilities and their duties are to the community, but also to the courts. We all take an obligation to respect the court and what its obligations are on us. So what do lawyers do? Well, they do many things. They advise their clients. I think one of the things that is critical to being a good lawyer, and a solicitor is one of those things, you create opportunities for people, you assist them. But one of the skills of being a good lawyer is that you have to be an innate problem solver. You have to find solutions. You have to see people in their problems and find a way through that is both efficient and ethical. You would have to draft documents, you have to deal with contracts and merger agreements. They're just the practical means by which you achieve those ends. Good lawyers are good researchers. Barristers have to find out what the law is. I've told you there's so much avenues for law. Barristers, another part of the profession, spend a lot of time researching and arguing positions, usually to courts. But one of the things we also teach at the law school is going to court may be the last option. We really want our graduates to understand alternative dispute resolution, that mediation, negotiation and arbitration is a real and vibrant alternative to disputes in the courts. And you have to represent, and some do, represent their clients in courts and present arguments about their client's case. A point that I also would like to just make is that, and it's one of the themes coming out of our degree, is that legal graduates have a special role in a global world. Globalisation and the new economy has not left the law degree behind. To be a lawyer in South Australia is one thing, but we now have to be, we understand laws come from everywhere. This is a borderless, boundless world. Information technology has changed the way that legal education takes place. You will see when you go to the library that there's a lot of books, but there's probably double the size of the world's content just on your laptop. So open economies require a different understanding of how the law works, and the pace of change is phenomenal. We recently had a group who put online materials, and they did it within 15 years. They've just done it. You can't appreciate the influence that's had on how we can now access the law of our country and other places. One of the questions following this legal and globalisation is that there is a real intersection, I think, between local communities and the global world. Globalisation is sometimes the phrase you think about it. Recently, just take an example, the Supreme Court of the United States made a determination in intellectual property law, deciding that can you have a patent, can you have a monopoly over genes, over the genes that are in us all? And the Supreme Court had to determine that question. Now, that determination, that those things that occur in nature, that are natural, cannot be patented, that's had an influence on researchers here in this university who are dealing in gene therapy. The question about who can control what occurs in nature. So we're all connected, we're all have to appreciate the world is much bigger than what's happening here in South Australia. And how we've done that is we've now made international law, and international law is now going to be a compulsory in our degree. Every first year student will be studying international law at our university, and that means we'll have a suite of other international electives for those who are interested in that. And I just should say, we'll see one of the images you've recently seen, and I'll point to is two of our students just won the Australian International Humanitarian Law winner, and they're off to Hong Kong to do some mooting in that. So where do people get jobs? As I've tried to say, lawyers are everywhere. Some are working in large, small and medium law firms. Some are working in corporations, in business, in banking and finance. They're in the government sector, they're in courts, they're in the academy, they're in community sector, they're in politics, they are everywhere, in the media. One of the things I hope you take away from this talk is that your law degree is going to be, it's a way of thinking that you can apply to many areas of the world. Continuing my theme of where lawyers are working, they're working in those firms, but they're not just working in South Australia or Australia, they're everywhere. One of the things I have a great pleasure of doing is meeting our alumni and meeting them not just here in Adelaide but around the world. I was recently speaking to an alumni who's working for BHP in London, and he's in charge of the regulation of that company around the globe. They're working as barristers, but they're not just working here in Adelaide. They're working in Sydney and Melbourne and Hong Kong and New York. They're working in law firms, again, around the world. They're working in government. They're working in Canberra. They're working in other places. They're working in regional and rural areas. Recently, I took the Law Reform Institute, another institution that's based at the law school. We had an event in Port Pirie, and there was a real call, I think, for those lawyers to work in regional areas. Just as there's a bit of a concern about medical professionals working in the region, so is there about lawyers. But all lawyers can be generalists, but they can also be specialisations, and we try and pick up those areas of specialisations in what we teach. So I've already pointed to the fact we have a large suite of electives and education in the area of international law and human rights. We also have great strength in public law. Those are those people like myself who are concerned with constitutional law and administrative law and how the role of the state is involved. But we also have strength in corporation law and commercial law. We have a number of insolvency lawyers on staff at the moment who never seem to have a bad day. A GFC makes their lives that little bit happier. We have private lawyers, family lawyers, environmental lawyers, a good selection of those people working in those areas. So criminal law, there are compulsory subjects you have to do as part of your law degree, and I'm pleased to say we have some very important strengths in there. But one of the things I want our lawyers to be, one of the things I want our graduates to be, is to make a difference. And making a difference is, I think there's no point just having a degree, you have to take it somewhere. One of the people I've just highlighted here who's just come back is Adam Webster, who is the 2012 Fulbright Scholar, one of our law students, one of my PhD students in fact, and Adam is working on the question of the law as it relates to rivers that run between two states, which is something South Australians have a bit of an interest in. So he's just come back from Arizona and from Colorado, a federal system where the river runs through a number of states. He went to those states where they're at the end of the river. So we have somebody who's trying to unpick the legal mire that we have to try and work through about being South Australians at the end of a river. We have academics also making a difference. My two colleagues, Professor Owens and Professor Stewart, are probably the leading industrial relations, workplace relations lawyers in the country. Recently done a major report for Fair Work Australia on internships, unpaid internships, and whether or not that in fact breaches the federal law. There's a large amount of publicity about people having hours and weeks and months of unpaid work, and whether or not that is what we as a society expect. I'll briefly go over our distinguished alumni again, because again I've made the point, it is with the tradition that we have, it is always wonderful to see where our lawyers are turned out. I haven't talked about the historical connection. One of the things I think you might have to do is when you go across to the law school, go down into the Sir John Salmon Library. Sir John Salmon was a judge of this court. He was an academic here. And salmon is also the code word, you know, for those who are doing the scavenger hunt. So I just might pause on that. Salmon is the word you're looking for. Pausing again, if we just move on about the law school experience, we want our students who are engaged in the profession but also engaged in their community. So we want them to be able to take their degree. We have a number of students who are doing internships, human rights internships, in South Africa and Geneva, The Hague, in London. There's information about that. We've had exchange tours to Germany and The Hague, and we have nationally internships who have been working in native title and public law. So our students have that ability to seek an internship whilst they're doing their degree in an area they're interested in. And locally, I should say, we have students who are doing some magnificent things with the Adelaide Legal Outreach Service. They're providing legal services under the supervision of lawyers at our law school to homeless people in this state. They're working in the magistrates' courts, helping those who have no legal representation. And we're also assisting in JusticeNet, a body that is also assisting those who need legal representation or support. Whilst at the law school, I hope you will embrace the opportunities that are there. So mooting courses, these are sort of debating legal points. There are special courses dealing with the Adelaide Law Review, which is not a play but a journal. We also have the South Australian Law Reform Institute, as I said, which is based here at the university. So our students not only learn out what the law is, but we want them to be able to leave our law school understanding what the law should be. I think that critical understanding. You should also get involved in the Law Student Society, and we have peer support for first year students in particular. One of the things we know is that people come to the university and can feel quite lost. One of those things you have to pause and remember is that this university has over 25,000 people. It's the size of Whyalla, if you think about that. We have a university which is on a small footprint but quite large in people. So we do at the law school spend a lot of time trying to make sure that that transition from school is something we are alive to. But also you should embrace those opportunities, as I said, to go overseas. We have exchange partners at Poitiers in France, Mannheim in Germany, in the United States, and Copenhagen in Denmark. And we'll have more of these study tours, as I've said. So what's the benefits to be taken of this program? Well, I believe we have a good balance between the theoretical foundations of the study of law and its practical application. So we want you to develop those generic skills, problem solvers, to be articulate, to be able to capture an idea, to be able to present an idea. We also want you to be ethical. There's nothing more demoralising, I find, than students who don't appreciate the ethical obligations that fall upon them by studying law. You owe a great service to yourself as well as to the community you're working for. We want to make sure you understand law in its broader context. It's political, it's social and it's economic. We want students who are stimulated by the learning environment and also stimulate each other. Most of the learning you will do at university will not be what we tell you, but the quiet contemplation and the discussion with others. I think that's the best way. If you can articulate what the law is out loud, I think you've learnt it. We also want you to develop those practical skills of good writing and good research skills and critical analysis. Taking things for what they are is not what we wish to teach you. So how do you get into the law school? Something a number of people ask us today. The point I want to make is there are many pathways into the law school. It's not just the ATAR and in you come. So let me point through these. We have the Adelaide Law School Achievement Pathway, which I'll say something about. We have school leavers, tertiary transfer students, graduate entry, and we have a TAFE pathway for those doing the Diploma of Legal Services or Advanced Diploma of Policing. In other words, we have a number of pathways to this law school. So let me say something briefly about the Adelaide Achievement Pathway. This is something we've had in place for 2 years now. Essentially what we have made an offer through SATAC to the student, the top student in any school in South Australia which has law as a preference. And that student must have us as their first preference. If there's the detail in here which I won't go into in much detail, but the critical thing is if you are the top student who puts law as its preference at your school, we have a guaranteed place for you. Your TER must be better than 80. So, and I will talk about those details if anyone wants to come and see for us at another stage. I can go that. The idea behind that is I want a pathway from every school in South Australia to my law school. Let me say something of the programs as I hand over to my colleague now, Corinne. So, Corinne, if you come up and we'll just talk about the number of types of programs we run at the law school. So, Corinne, I'll move the microphone down.
A bit further. Okay. With our programs, we've basically got 3 streams that you can go into. The undergraduate law program is for those not doing a double degree, just purely a single degree, and that will take roughly 4 years to complete. You got your double degree, which is the majority of our entry. Most of our students will do a double degree. That's usually 5 years, and then our graduate entry is 3 years. That's roughly how long they take, full-time, equivalent, going all well. With our honours, we have a with honours program, which is an automatic honours, which is applied at the end of when students graduate. It's based on a grade point average or a GPA cut-off score. That's currently under review. Every law school around the country is under review for that, so hopefully by the end of the year we'll know whether or not how that's going to actually continue in the future. Possibly the most important question everybody wants to know today is, what is the ATAR score going to be for next year? I wish I could tell you what it was going to be, but unfortunately we know no different until you guys will find out next year. So basically what we can say is generally for the 4-year program, the single degree, if that's what you're applying for school leavers, the ATAR is around about 95.3, which is what it was this year. We don't anticipate it to change much, but of course we have no idea until all offers are made. So aim for that, and hopefully it'll be around that mark. For those that are tertiary transfer students coming from other universities, it's a grade point average of 5.0, which is about a credit average. And then there's a special entry and the achievement program, as John mentioned before, the ATAR of 80. For our double degrees, you'll notice these are the streams that you can do your double degree with, depending on what it is. The ATAR is the same as the 4-year, it was 95.3, so just see how you go, hope for that. And hopefully most of our students benefit and do a double degree just because of the variety it gives and the career opportunities it gives at the end. And you'll find that no matter what you do, the law degree will complement that other degree. Even if you don't go into law, commerce, arts, whatever, it'll complement what you do. And the graduate entry, I'd probably envisage there's not that many here for the graduate entry, but for this year it was a 4.65, which is just below a credit average. In terms of our courses, so this is the list of all the core courses that your students would do, regardless of what pathway or program you're actually in. I will just mention these core courses are based on what's known as the Priestley 11 areas of knowledge. So all law schools around the country have to teach these courses in some way. They may vary by splitting up courses into two, or they may keep them as one. It really depends. But ultimately, they're all the core courses every law school has to teach. So that's what you'll do throughout your program while you're here in terms of core courses. Where you get a bit of variety or a bit of specialisation is in your elective courses. Depends really what you're interested in. If you want to do a complete range of different electives, you can. If you want to specialise in, corporate law or international law or human rights law, then you have the option to do that as well. These are just some of them. These aren't all of our electives. It's impossible to list all of them on here. And most students do 5 electives, all the core courses, and then 5 electives. So you've got a bit of variety to get a feel for what kind of area of law you might be interested in, or what might actually complement your other degree as well. Now I'll hand back to John. I do have to mention to everyone, if anyone was planning on going to the internship talk, it's actually going to be straight after our talk this morning. So if you just head straight over to the law school, which is literally directly to my left, your right of the Bonython Hall, and then they'll start the internship talk straight after this.
Thank you very much, Corinne. So we're on the home run now, ladies and gentlemen. So the keys to success, I guess I get asked this a number of times, people who are thinking about doing law, but also those who are doing law. I think the basic two are enjoy what you study and study what you enjoy. We get some people who come and do law because I got the TER, but have no real interest in law. I don't think that's a good way to start your career. I think you need to enjoy thinking, reading and writing. Law is a very language-rich course. If you don't enjoy reading, again, it may not be the course for you. I think you have to start to develop the qualities of your mind and spirit that is essential to success when you start doing law. And those things are, be curious. I think you have to be interested in the world around you and others. Good lawyers are curious people, I find. I think you have to be intellectually open. Being dogmatic may be useful once you've come to a view, but starting with that, I've never found that to be a good way. Arguing that black is white is not a reasonable thing to do when in fact it isn't. I think you have to see other people's points of view. Be bold. I think people should have the energy to be bold and be challenging. But also you have to be measured. There's brave and crazy brave. I think you have to be very measured and bold, but you have to have compassion and rigour. I think the lawyers have to see the faults in themselves and in the others that they're dealing with. I think you have to challenge yourself. You have to develop self-discipline. There's long hours of reading and contemplating, but there's fun as well. And I think learning and working with others is also a key skill for being a good lawyer. So I'll skip the graduate entry point. Two last things, a bit of a folly. We're running a photographic competition. Images of Justice. I want you all, anyone who's a photographer who knows a photographer, it closes in a month. It's $1,000 for a community person, a student, or a professional photographer. Why am I doing this? Well, and the image you see, that was the winning one from a student last year. Why are we doing it? I want to hear what the community thinks law is, and I think photography is a very democratic way of doing it. We all have a camera these days. I want to hear what you think law is, what your image of justice is, and what this year's sub-theme is truth. So more details from the flyer. If you know someone or you are a photographer, please come and see me. Closes on the 16th of September. One last add is that we're having open night on the 11th of December this year. This is a chance to see the campus experience at dusk. It's also a chance to answer some of those more questions. Bring your friends and enjoy the campus. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's really all I have to say today. Thank you very much for coming. We will be back across in the law school momentarily. If you have any questions, please come and see us. Thank you very much for braving the elements, and I look forward to seeing many of you in our law school. Thank you.